Shalom friends, welcome to this lesson in Parsha. We're looking at Parshat Korach today. Parshat Korach follows after Parshat Shlach Lecha, send for yourself. And in the previous Parsha, we learned about two amazing ideas. In fact, I highlighted both ideas in a previous Shear, and you should go back and listen to that Shear to get an idea of how things flow from here. Now, in the previous Shear on Parshat Shlach, we spoke about the idea that the spies had gone out to scout out the land of Eretz Canaan, the land which would become known as Eretz Israel as we have it today. And Moshe had sent them out for the sole purpose of finding out whether or not this was a land that the Jewish people, the Israelites at the time, would want to inhabit. The truth, of course, is that there was no particular reason why they had to go out and scout out the land. But nevertheless, Moshe was commanded by Hashem that if he wished to, he could send out the spies and they could go check out things for themselves. When the spies went out, they used their eyes in a negative sense. And instead of seeing the good in the land, instead of seeing the beautiful fruits, instead of seeing the miracles that were going on around them at the time, certain things that were happening that they were supposed to see as miracles, but instead they saw in a negative light. They used their eyes in a negative sense, and as a result of this, they were punished with the fact that the Jewish people, the Israelites, were at that time put into a situation that they were punished to remain in the desert for a period of 40 years. They used their eyesight incorrectly. At the end of the parsha in Shlach, we see that there's a kind of a tikkun, a kind of a correction that occurred for the Israelites. The correction is that Hashem gave a command to the Israelites, to the Jewish people, that they were to wear upon themselves a garment of tzitzit. Now, tzitzit are basically a four-cornered garment in which we put 4 strings, which are folded into 8, and one of the strings is colored with a turquoise color, a beautiful blue color, through the special creature known as the chilazon, a type of a snail that exists in the sea. And as a result of this, it makes a beautiful color. And the purpose of this is to look at the tzitzit and to remember the commandments of Hashem. As we look at the tzitzit, which are folded up in a certain way, and as we start to understand the numerical value of what tzitzit are, we begin to become reminded of the commandments that we are commanded to keep. As we know, the word tzitzit has a numerical value of 600, and this corresponds to the letters in the word tzitzit, which is tzadi, which is 90, yud, which is 10, tzadi, which is 90, yud, which is 10, and taf, which is 400, a total of 600. And if we look at the knots and the strings of the tzitzit, we see that each tassel, in other words, each section that comes off on the 4 corners, has a total of 5 knots and 8 strings. 4 strings doubled over into 2, making 8 strings. 8 plus 5 equals 13. So tzitzit is the numerical value of 613. When we look at the tzitzit, we are reminded of the 613 commandments of the Torah. Fine, that works out very nicely, which means to say, the Torah is teaching us, don't use your eyesight incorrectly to look at things that you shouldn't be looking at. In other words, don't look at the negative as you go out and scout the land of Canaan, of Eretz Israel, which is to become Eretz Israel. Instead, use your eyesight in a beneficial manner. Look at the tzitzit, be reminded of all the commandments, and do what is required of you to do. When we come to Parshat Korach, an amazing story occurs which is linked directly to the previous parsha of Shlach related to the tzitzit. An argument ensues due to Korach wanting to take a certain great responsibility within the Jewish people. Let us read the words inside the Chumash and let us see exactly what the words mean. The parsha begins and says, Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahas ben Levi v'Dasan v'Aviram b'nei Eliyahu v'on ben Peles b'nei Reuven. And Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kahas, the son of Levi, and Datan and Aviram, who were the sons of Eliyahu, and On ben Peles, the sons of Reuven. It says, and he took. Now, this is very interesting. It doesn't say what he took. It doesn't explain to us anything about what's going on in the story. It just says he took. Rashi explains to us that what it means is he took himself to one side of the debate. Korach was upset at seeing that Moshe and Aharon had been given great roles in the Jewish people, and he too wanted a great role. He felt that as a descendant of Levi, and a very important descendant, and not only that, he looked into the future, and he saw that one of his own descendants, Shmuel the prophet, was actually his own child, coming off a number of generations later. If such a great person would come from him, surely he himself was a great person, an outstanding individual. And therefore he said to himself, why is it that I don't have greatness in my own life? Why did God not give me the great level of leadership that he gave to Moshe and to Aharon? And therefore he took himself to the other side of the debate. He moved himself to the other side. He was not a part of wanting to be a part of the Jewish people. He takes himself across. Vayakumu lifnei Moshe va'anashim b'nei Yisrael 50 u'matayim, and they stood up against Moshe, people from the Jewish people, 250, 50 u'matayim nesiei eda, 250 of the leaders of the tribes, Kriei Moed Anshe Shem, they were the greatest men with great name. These were the people that he took to argue in his favor, to fight the fight that he could become also a leader amongst the Jewish people. And so the story continues and speaks about the fact that they come up against Moshe and Aharon and the Jewish people, and they say ultimately, we also want a portion to be leaders amongst the Jewish people. What was their argument? Rashi tells us, V'hilbisham talitot shekulam techelet. He brought these people, and they were all wearing garments of pure blue. Ba'u v'amdu lifnei Moshe. They came and they stood in front of Moshe. Amru lo. They said to him, Talit shekula shel techeles. If you have a talis which is entirely made of blue. Remember in the previous parsha, we said that the talis has white strings and it has one blue string. Korach says, what about the situation of a talis which is completely blue? Chayevet betzitzit or petura? Do we have to put tzitzit on, or is it exempt? Implication. If blue is what's so important, then surely if the entire garment is blue, then we don't need to worry about putting blue onto the tzitzit, and that's what counts. Omar lahem chayevet. Moshe says to them, it is obligated. You must put a blue tassel even onto the strings, and it must have the strings of the tzitzit as well. Blue is not essential. What we require, even if the garment is pure white, and even if the tzitzit are white, and then you have a blue thread, that is also fine. But even if the garment is blue, nevertheless, it requires tzitzit, and then of course you would put the blue of the techeles in it as well. What exactly was the argument that Korach was giving to Moshe and to Aharon? He was saying to them, at the end of the day, isn't it true that everybody has a certain greatness to them, and it shouldn't be limited to one particular individual, Moshe and Aharon? And therefore, if everybody has greatness, isn't it true that you wouldn't require the tzitzit? Now, the tzitzit tell us about the mitzvahs of the Torah. And therefore, if we exclude the tzitzit, we exclude the Torah itself, because we base it on a premise that since the garment is blue, so therefore you don't require the real tzitzit. Instead, all you require is a blue garment. Korach made a mistake. He assumed to say that if everybody in the Jewish people is great, therefore I too can be the leader. He went a little bit too far in making the statement that he was justly deserving of becoming a leader. In a certain respect, he didn't make a mistake. Everybody is great. His mistake was in thinking that in his greatness, he should have been the leader. According to the mystical tradition, according to the Kabbalah, every single soul that comes down into this world is here for the purpose of tikkun, to correct itself. What does that mean exactly? Well, on a simple level, this means that we are here to improve and work on ourselves and to develop ourselves going through the variety of tests that God puts to us in this world. When we do what we're supposed to do, we eventually reach a point of tikkun, of correcting ourselves. And when we correct ourselves, we correct the world, and ultimately we prepare the world for Mashiach. If, of course, we don't work on correcting ourselves as individuals, we lose out, and also the world stands to lose out as a result of us not doing what it is that we should do. Korach was right about one thing. Each of us is individual. Each of us is great. He was wrong about one thing. He thought he was the greatest. Let me share a brief story which I've shared before on a previous lesson. It's a favorite of mine. And let's put this whole Devar Torah into perspective. The story was told, for those who haven't heard it already, about a great man by the name of Shear mi Anipoli, the great Hasidic Rebbe Shear, who came from the city of Anipoli, and he had a brother who was a great man himself, and his name was Elimelech of Lizinsk. Now, when it got to a stage in his life where he felt he was going to die, one day he was crying, and his brother came to him and he asked him, "Why are you crying, my brother Shear? You're a very great man. What's the problem?" He said, "I'm going to die soon. One of these days I'm going to die." Elimelech said, "So, that's what happens to all of us. What are you so upset about?" He said, "Because when I die and I leave this world, I'm going to have Hashem asking me questions about how I did in this world, according to my tikkun, what I had to do." He says, "But you know something?" He says, "I'm not going to be afraid when they say to me, 'Why were you not as great as Moshe Rabbeinu? Why were you not as great as Moses?' Because when they ask that question, I will say to them, it was because I was not Moses. And if they say to me, 'Why were you not as great as King David?' I will say, because I was not King David." And so he went through a number of people describing that he would not be bothered if he were asked why it was that he was not as great as these people. Because simple, he was not those people. But when they come to ask me why I was not as great as Shear, to this I will have no answer. Did I become as great as I could have become? The tikkun process is to become as great as to who we are. The world is made up of billions of souls. God is infinite. God does not create duplicates. God has within the world all sorts of great geniuses and great beings. God has created the birds in the sky. He has created the fish in the sea. He has created human beings of all kinds and all colors, all different types of people with different mentalities. We all look so different from each other. We all sound so different from each other. This is because each of us has a purpose to become who it is that we really are. Korach was on a right track to a certain extent, but he misunderstood the concept of what it was that he was to become. When we look at our bodies, we see that there are eyes, we see that there are ears, we see there's a nose and a mouth, we see arms and legs, we see organs, a heart, lungs, liver, kidneys. And nobody ever turns around and says to himself, "How I wish my heart were the lungs, how I wish my lungs were the heart, how I wish my baby toe were to be my baby finger, how I wish X, Y, and Z." A person looks at his body and he values all the different parts of the body for what they are. Each part of the body gives something to the body that is unique, that makes up the essence of the body so that we can function as we should. When we do a puzzle, for example, like a jigsaw puzzle, we see that there are many, many pieces involved, and each piece has on it a different picture. When we put all of the pieces together as they should be, we make for ourselves a beautiful picture. And that's the fun of doing the puzzle. It's to see the broken pieces, put them together in a certain way, and then make up the puzzle and see exactly what the final picture is all about. Two pieces are not the same. They are all individually different and fit within each other in different ways. The beauty is to put the pieces in a way that eventually makes the puzzle fitting as it should be. The limbs of the body, the organs of the body, make up the synergy of the body. Anybody who likes chocolate out there, you go into the store and you purchase a slab of chocolate. Tasty, you say to yourself, this is something I can eat. It tastes so wonderful. But the person who neglects to see how many thousand people were involved in the production of the chocolate is mistaken in thinking that the chocolate is what it is only because it is what it is. But he forgets that in order to create the chocolate, we need a cow, we need a farmer, we need a person who will milk the cow, we will need the farmer who owns the land. We will need graphic designers to design and produce designs that make up the colors on the wrapper of the chocolate. We will need people who design the plastic covering or the metal sheeting or the paper covering, whatever it is. We need thousands of people involved in the production. Eventually, we will have workers who will take all the milk and they will throw the milk into the contents of a huge machine. And inside this machine, there will be milk products and there will be flavoring products and there will be other things. And the workers work hard together, all together, creating the taste of the chocolate. Eventually, multiple machines will take hold of all of this liquid production and it will begin to solidify it and it will turn it into a chocolate. And other machines will take it through and produce squares or shapes of all kinds. And eventually it will go through other machines and it will come into something else. Then, at the end of the production, people will come and take these chocolates and they will place them into trucks and they will take it from the trucks to the store. And afterwards there will be an owner of a store who will sell us that chocolate and he will put it onto his shelves. And each of these individual people will be required in the production process so that we can have that chocolate. And then, of course, don't forget the people who produce the vehicle and the people involved in the licensing department to make sure that everything moves smoothly so that there aren't too many accidents on the road, that there shouldn't be any accidents on the road. All of these people take part in the production of the chocolate. And when I eat it, and incidentally, I make my blessing and I thank Hashem for the wonderful chocolate, the tasty chocolate I'm eating, I begin to think of the thousands of different types of people involved in the production. I thank Hashem not just for the chocolate, not just for the milk, not just for the energy that it gives me or the taste. I thank Him in a certain sense for giving me all of the thousands of people who take a part in the production of that chocolate. If each of these people were to own a store, there would be no chocolate. If each of these people were to own a farm, there would be no chocolate. If each of these people were to be graphic designers, there would be no chocolate. What makes the chocolate is as it is because of the thousands of people who are so unique, so different, who all take part in the process. And while there may be one business leader who runs the organization, there are thousands of people who are needed to make the product what it is. And we need to learn to appreciate and value all the people in the production. Korach was right about one thing. We need the blue. We need to see the greatness of each individual. His mistake was in thinking that he was it. He was everything of everything. When the talus is covered with a blue cover, when everything is blue, do we need you also? Do we need the tassels that sit on the strings of the garment? Once I already have all the qualities, surely we don't need people along the way. I can do it all. Korach made a mistake. Each of us is individual. Each of us is great. But the task that we have is to identify the greatness that we have for ourselves. We need to see the zushias that are in each of us. Moshe's greatness is his greatness because Hashem gives him the greatness that he has. Aharon is great in a sense because of what Hashem gives him to become great, as he is a leader of the Kohanim. Moshe, a leader of the Jewish people. And so Korach would have been a leader in his own sense too. For what, I'm not 100% certain. But if he had taken on the role of doing what it was that he was required to do, he would have succeeded in becoming a great individual in himself. And those 250 people who were following him, who also misunderstood what it was that he was saying, would too have become the great individuals that they could have become. The only reason that the earth swallowed them up is because at the end of the day, when a person thinks he is it, he is the Almighty himself, he is the greatest thing in the entire world, there is nothing that can be done to him to stop him except for the earth to swallow him up completely. Ben Zoyma in Pirkei Avot says a very beautiful statement. Chapter 4, Mishnah 1. He says, Ezehu mechubad. Who is an honored person? Hamechabed is habriot. Somebody who honors creatures. Somebody who can give honor to others is himself or herself the honored person. When I am able to show my respect to somebody else, and I am able to value them for the effort that they put into life, of whatever it is that they do. They're a cashier at the store. They're the postman. They clean the bathroom. Whatever it is that they do. But I learn to value and respect their role. I am the one that becomes honored. Honor and greatness come from seeing the differences in people and what each one is able to contribute to the other, so that together we can make a success. Together we can become greater. Our duty is to look at ourselves as individuals and to value every other person for what it is that they're able to give the world. When we do that, we see the body taking effect. We see the heart filling its role. We see the lungs filling their roles. We see the puzzle coming together. The images begin to form, and we become the zushas that we are supposed to become. Let us learn from the lesson of Korach, the negative lesson, which we turn into a positive lesson, as we proceed from Parshat Shlach, learning about the negativity of the spies who used their eyes incorrectly. We move on to the Parsha of Tzitzit, where we learn to use our eyes correctly. When we see correctly, we see the value of things. We do not pervert it like Korach. Korach saw the tzitzit, he says, here are the commandments, and he makes a story up about what the commandments are in his own mind. This is dangerous. The commandments are set up to distinguish what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and to put each of us in our places and direct us on a path that is suitable for each of us as an individual. Parshat Korach says, you can become a Moshe. Do not think you are Moshe. Do not think you are Aharon. But do realize that you can become like Moshe. The moment we set ourselves up with the right way of thinking, the moment we see life in the right way, the moment we honor others and see their greatnesses and their differences too, as to what they can contribute within society and the world in general, at that point in time, we ourselves become the greater person, we ourselves become the honored person, and we ourselves become a Moshe within the world that we are living and in the things that we do. Let's take that message into our lives every day. Become Moshe. Strive to become Moshe. But become the Moshe of who you are and become the great person you can become, so that what you do in society makes a great thing for everybody else. Do not seek to be Moshe, but seek to become like Moshe in your own life. Thank you very much for joining me for this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you have, please do like my video and do share the video with your friends. Please let your family know about it. Subscribe to my channel, click on the bell button and be informed of future shiurim. And of course, if you want to be in touch with me directly, please go and visit my site, www.lovingkindness.co. Please send me a message and I'll be delighted to be in touch with you. If you'd like to learn some Torah together with me one-on-one, please be in touch via my website and let me know what's going on in your life. We can sit and discuss life. We can sit and discuss Torah. And for those of you who wish to learn about writing mezuzot, I'm also a teacher of Sofrut, and I'll be delighted to teach you these wonderful laws and this wonderful profession as well. Thanks a lot for joining me. I look forward to another shiur in the near future, and I wish you everything of the best. Take care. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.